My fiance.
Yeah, but if you do that for week after week,
Yeah, no, you don't want to do
it's
that.
hard on you. Yeah, it's hard on you. And now you can take 10 Tylenol a day.
I'd like to call the Maumelle City Council meeting to order. First, I need to let you know that Councilmember Anderson and Councilmember Williams will not be in attendance tonight. They notified me last week, so they will not be here. Next order of business is invocation and pledge of allegiance, and so I've asked Councilmember Vapurzian to lead us in that.
Let's pray. Father, we love you. We thank you for a beautiful day here in Maumelle, for your many, many blessings. And while we are so blessed here, may we always be conscious that there are so many around this globe who do not have the comforts, the freedoms that we are afforded. And I give much of that to the fact that we can openly say our pledge and mention you and talk about your goodness to us. Your word says, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. And if we would just commit that to you, things would be much better. I don't pray for unity tonight because unity to me looks different than it looks to someone else. So I pray that we follow your will, and that if we do that, two violins tuned to the same piano are tuned to each other. And if we walk with you, we'll walk in the same direction. Help us to do your work tonight, the city's business, for the people that have elected us to serve. Thank you for our leadership. And we do pray for our military men and women here and overseas, that you would give them the protection. Our uniformed personnel here, Father, that you would protect them as well. Thank you for all that you've given to us. Help us to be good stewards this evening of your time. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I need to ask the council's indulgence. We have it under special guest announcements. I want to hand out an award tonight, so I'd ask that y'all allow me to do that at this time. Yeah. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around front here and Mr. Hogan, if you want to come up here, Mr. Argill. On March the 29th, our street superintendent, Jason Bargill here, was driving down Counts Massey Roadway, and he noticed a car off in a detention pond that goes into Northwood Creek. And so instead of just driving on by thinking, well, that's probably been there for a while, he actually got out of his truck, walked over to the lake, and he could hear somebody pounding on the car window. And so he, at the jeopardy of his own life, waded into the water and opened the door of the vehicle and helped get the gentleman out of the car who could not rescue himself from the vehicle. And so we want to present a life-saving award to Jason Bargill tonight for his heroic efforts in that event. And so let me read you the award. It says, City of Maumelle, Arkansas, Life-Saving Award presented to Jason Bargill for saving the life of a motorist who had driven into a detention pond. His actions resulted in the rescuing of the motorist from the submerged vehicle and prevented a near drowning on March the 29th, 2018, awarded this 16th day of April, 2018. It says 19th, but we're going to get that fixed. So, yeah, that threw me off a little bit there. All right, but it's signed by Mike Hogan and signed by Mike Watson. Jason, congratulations. Did you want to say anything?
I do. I think Jason was in the right place at the right time. I had Officer Pettit give me a call after the incident happened. I already knew about it. He seemed to think that if it wasn't for Jason, the guy wouldn't have made it. So, good job.
Amen. Awesome.
And that was actually in North Little Rock, so he went outside of Maumelle and took care of the situation. So.
Good job.
Yeah, y'all may be excused, yes. Unless y'all want to stick around for a real exciting meeting, so. All right, next item, and that was, I mean, a few weeks ago, we had the police and fire banquet where we gave life-saving awards to our firefighters and to our police officers. And so this gentleman right here, Jason, his job is not to go out and rescue people, but he took it on himself when he saw the situation that he did that and then made the phone call later to get assistance from the North Rock Police Department and all that. So, just, you know, and I will tell you, the water was not warm that day. He had to go home and change clothes, so, yeah. All right, next item is the approval of the minutes from the April 2nd regular meeting. All the council members have a copy of those minutes in their packets. Is there any additions or corrections to those minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the minutes as submitted. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes. Next item is public comment. I have one public comment card, but it's on an item that's on the agenda, so we will hold that card until that time. Next item is the financial statement review, and Ms. Vega is here to present the financial statement.
So these are the March 31st, 2018 financials.
Can you turn the mic?
These are the March 31st, 2018 financials. The first slide. This is showing our fund balance comparison to budget, and in the general fund where our cash is above budget, and the yellow line is showing the required reserves. So we have beyond the required reserves, and the street fund is up a little bit, and the sanitation fund is also above budget. This is showing our revenue, and seniors their revenue is up, and that's because in first quarter 2017 the new senior center wasn't open, and the city sales tax is up above last year. This slide is the street fund, and it's showing the state turnback, the street aid, and the millage tax. The millage tax, the budget that's showing there, it doesn't take into consideration when we get our money, and so that's just a fourth of our annual budget. And then our sanitation fees were up above budget and up above prior year. Okay, now we're moving into our expenses. And police and fire, you can see that there's quite an increase there, and that's due to uniform employees' pay increase and the corresponding law fee expense that goes along with that. Again, on seniors, the senior center, they were not open first quarter, and so their expenses are higher. The Economic Development Department, their expenses are up, but that's just timing differences compared to last year. And then city services, the increase is due to liability insurance. This slide shows how our spending is as a whole for each department, and as you can see, our biggest budget items are police and fire. The street fund expenditures, 2017, there was an unreimbursed third entrance design that was not reimbursed. That's why the 2017 expense is so high. And 2018, we did receive our reimbursement that we were waiting for. The The other variance is fuel expense in 2017 was, at this time, was understated because the fuel allocation was not booked, but it was corrected in later months. The sanitation expenses, tipping fees increased to $7,500. And again, the fuel allocation in 2017 was not booked, but corrected in later months, and that was $4,800. That's it. Any questions? Okay.
If there's not any questions, I'd entertain a motion to approve the March financials.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and second to approve the March financials. Is there a discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes. Departmental reports, we do that at the first meeting of each month. Procedural motion, I need a motion from the floor to read all resolutions and ordinances by title only. Do I hear? Have a motion and a second to read all resolutions and ordinances by title only tonight. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes. Moving on to unfinished business, we have the second reading of ordinance number 951, amending the Maumelle City Code. City Clerk Timmons, if you would read that, please.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 951, an ordinance adopting and enacting supplemental provisions of the City of Maumelle Code for the City of Maumelle, Arkansas, providing for the manner of amending such code and providing when such code of this ordinance shall become effective.
Okay, as we discussed at the last meeting, this is just the codification of ordinances that we had passed from, thought there was a date on here, adopted after October 16, 2017. Is there any questions on that ordinance? If not, it'll be on third reading at the next meeting. Next item is the second reading of ordinance number 952, amending the master land use plan. City Clerk Timmons, if you'd read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 952, an ordinance amending the Maumelle Land Use Plan and map for other purposes.
This ordinance is also on second reading. It's dealing with the rezoning of 2.49 acres at the Villa at River Point Drive. We have representatives here tonight. The Jacksons are here if y'all have any questions. Councilmember Mosley.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, you're the sponsor of this, and I was just wanting to, I didn't do it last meeting, wanted to just ask you to elaborate a little bit. I mean, this is a situation where where we would be facilitating the addition of additional high-density housing units, kind of in a traffic bottleneck area, and I was wanting to ask you your take on this and how you know, to me this is not a good thing to do that. I know we've got a traffic situation, but when we have an opportunity to perhaps keep traffic flowing, I always feel like we should keep it flowing, and I'd just ask you to, if you wouldn't mind, to just kind of elaborate why you think this is something we should go ahead and do.
Well, I'm a sponsor because it came from the Planning Commission, and so that's why I'm the sponsor of it. But I think you heard from Mr. Jackson last time that apartments actually don't create as much traffic sometimes as single-family residential. He made that statement, and I agree with that statement. And a lot of may not have a job that puts them out there at 7 o'clock in the morning or put them out there at 7:30 or something like that, especially if they're younger people. They may have different hours. They may work late nights and things like that. So, the single-family homes will put 10 traffic counts on a roadway, and I don't think the apartments would do that, especially if it's a single person living in that apartment complex versus a family that has two parents and 3 kids driving cars. You're talking about 5 cars a day out of one single family that's a large one as compared to an apartment that has one person living in it. So I don't think the traffic count is necessarily going to be equal, but it's not going to be to the detriment of the traffic. And we also, just recently passed the interchange, so we're going to have a opportunity to have another outlet out of Maumelle, which should help with the bottleneck that's on the boulevard. It's going to take a year for these to get constructed roughly. The interchange is about 2-year time frame, so there'd be a year's worth of a little bit of pain possibly, but that means you're going to have to turn down every subdivision that comes to Maumelle also that wants to do single family because we're waiting on a traffic solution.
Right. Well, I appreciate the answer there.
Okay.
If you have that study, I know a study was cited. I'd like to see that.
Okay. I don't have it in my possession, but I'll see if I can get it.
Okay, that'd be great. And, it is 56 units. I don't know how much space that would take. I don't know if that's like 2 or 3 residential housing units or what, as far as a lot, a big lot.
Well,
Anyway,
3 to 4 lots per acre in a single family addition.
3 to 4 lots per acre. Okay, yeah.
So it'd be 10, up to 10.
Be about 10.
Could be if it was 4, yes.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you for your take. I appreciate it.
All right, you're welcome. Councilmember Scott?
Yes, thank you, sir. The strategic plan indicated that more and more families are looking for apartment-type living rather than single-family dwellings, and they do that for a variety of reasons. One is that families are busier and they don't want the upkeep of property. So if Maumelle is going to provide a community with a multitude of options for families or single people, we're going to need to have a variety of housing. That fact of life, of how people are changing the way they're living and will continue to change the way they're living in the future, plus the new interchange, as you mentioned, and the adaptive light system that's going to happen along the boulevard, I don't think that the impact of these apartments and the timing of them is such that we'll experience a lot of pain from that. If we're going to have multifamily dwellings, which I think is just inevitable and it's something that we have to do, I would like for them to be the quality of those such as the Villa. They're beautiful. I went out to look at them. There are all kinds of amenities. It's like going to a resort. So congratulations for that. The cabanas around the pools, the grilling areas, the dwellings themselves are just awesome. And I congratulate you on that design. So like I said, if we're going to have multifamily dwellings, which I think is inevitable, I want them like that.
Thank you. Councilmember Vapurzian?
Several things. I think the people who are going to live here aren't going to hit the boulevard anyway. If they're going to 430, they're not going to hit the boulevard. There's a better option.
Okay.
Anyway, second, if you look at the permit, we're way up. Single-family permits are way up. So I was driving through the city this past week, just driving through, and dozens and dozens and dozens, and maybe you know this. How many lots for sale right now for single-family homes are in Maumelle? I wanted to say could be 100 or more. But even if you go down Odom from Ridgeland Trails all the way down Odom, Maumelle Valley Estates, all the way down there, even Marion, in your neighborhood with the new, there are numerous lots. I don't know how many there are if you even have a round number, but there are many. There are dozens and dozens of lots for sale right now in Maumelle. So we are growing, we are expanding. We have some very nice homes coming in, and these apartments lend to what Maumelle is, for certain. They're nothing like the apartments in North Little Rock. So I think they're very classy.
I don't have a number that's currently for sale, but I do know there's 2 subdivisions under construction that would total about 50 lots that are under construction that will be open later this year. And there's probably close to that 100 number that you stated. Now, some of those are lots that are pretty expensive,
Yes.
that it would not be for
No.
a starter home or anything like that. So, but yeah. But there's probably at least that number. Councilmember Timmons?
What I don't want to happen is for us to decline the ordinance and they end up going to North Little Rock and then we lose out on the revenue and the beautiful apartments.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this item is also on second reading and will be on third reading at the next meeting. Next item is the second reading of ordinance number 953, amending the Maumelle zoning map. And this deals with exactly the same piece of property we just discussed as a land use plan. In Maumelle, we have to amend the land use map before the zoning map can be done. And so that's why there's parallel ordinances on this project. City Clerk Timmons, if you would read the ordinance by title only, please.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 953, an ordinance amending the Maumelle zoning map and for other purposes.
Are there any questions or items on, or discussion items on this ordinance? And Mr. Jackson, I didn't give you the chance to speak. If you wanted to speak on it as the applicant, or, okay, all right. If there's no questions, we'll move on to the next item. Be moving to new business, and the first item on that is the appointment of the Academics Charter School Board. The city representative, the appointment of the city representative to the Academic Plus Charter School Board. We have two applicants that have applied for that. I also have a comment card on that. Mr. Swear, would you like to speak before or after the candidates? Okay. All right, we'll hear from the two applicants, and then we'll give you a chance to speak before the vote is taken. Okay, if that's all right. All right, we have Ms. Adria Conklin, who's the current representative on the board, the city's representative on the board. Then we have Mr. Stephen Bright, who've applied to serve in that position. What we typically do is we ask the applicants to step out into the blue room so that they don't hear questions or comments. And so, Mr. Bright, we'll go with, as they're listed here, if you would step to the blue room. And you're colorblind? I think you know where it is, though, I believe, yeah. Thank you. Ms. Conklin, if you want to come up and there's a copy of your resume in the packet, but if you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself in your own words, and then the council may have some questions for you.
Sure. Happy to do so. As you guys can see from my resume, I'm an attorney at Mitchell Williams, but I'm not one of those that goes up in front of court on a regular basis. So I am out of practice for speaking in front of people. So if I stumble over my words, y'all forgive me. I'm going to try to keep it really brief. I came onto the board about 6 years ago, thanks to this council's approving my appointment. At that point in time, I had a first grader and a kindergartner. And so kind of in thinking of what I was going to talk to you guys today, I looked back and I'm like, we have come a long way. My boy, when he started kindergarten, he's in 7th grade now, he is the last kindergarten class that started in the portables. That was the last class that started in the portables. My girl, who is in 6th grade, they're a year apart. When she started kindergarten, she's the first class that will go all the way through the new buildings. And so they're a year apart, and my boy says it's not fair that he had to go through the portables, and she did not, but leave that. Looking back, when my kids started there, the enrollment cap was 650. So 6 years ago, 650. Currently, our enrollment cap has been bumped up to 1,050, projected to go up to 1,150 next year, and then I think we hit 1,300 in a couple of years. So the school will have doubled in size in just a couple of years from now. When my son started, I had some folks tell me, you may have to deal with a waiting list. I walked in, I handed his application. A couple days later, I got notified that he was in. If we had a waiting list, it was very small. At this point in time, we have over 900 students on the waiting list, which is amazing when you think about our enrollment cap is 1,050. We have almost as many kids who want to come to the school as those who are in it right now. I also, when I started my kiddos there, folks who I talked to said, you know, the elementary school's okay, but you want to be careful with the high school. And that was kind of the knowledge base at the time. Last week, the Department of Education issued report cards for all of the public schools in the state, and the elementary school got an A, and the high school got an A. That pretty much answers my question about the high school. I'm not worried about that anymore. So you can kind of see over the last several years, the school has been on an upward trajectory. And I think Mr. Bright's statement may have mentioned that there were some frustrating times, and I think that's true. I think there were early on some very frustrating times. And in fact, when I got on the board 6 years ago, it was at the tail end of that time frame. There were still some contentious board meetings. There were still tempers ran high. There were still some personalities that had not figured out how to get along. In the last 6 years or so, to me, at least from my perspective, that has improved drastically. And you've got a board out there now who, by and large, are all focused on improving the school. And at the heart of what they're doing there, they're there to make the school better for the students. And there are still strong personalities. That is absolutely true, and that's always going to be true. And I think that's a good thing. That's a really good thing for a board because you need people who feel really strongly. But when you've got people out there who you know why they're there, it's for the good of the school and the good of the students, you can figure out how to work with them. And you can figure out how to make things happen that maybe in the past couldn't have happened. And that was, I think I came in at a time when the board needed something like that. And one way or the other, I ended up on the fundraising committee, and that's one of those issues. You guys are on a board. I'm sure there are issues here where you raise it, and somebody's going to do that. Somebody's going to go, oh, here we go again. Fundraising was that issue, and it came up again and again and again. And I finally reached out to Jess, and I said, Jess, what do we need to do? And he said, I don't know, but I'm appointing you chair of the fundraising committee. All right, let's see what we can do. And so I spent about 6 or 8 months talking to all the people who had problems and had history. I spent a lot of time with a phone out here like this saying, okay, I hear you. All right, let's figure it out. And at the end of the day, we were able to put a committee together. We put a policy in place, and it's run extremely smoothly for the last 3 years. And we've got organizations, we meet twice a year. We meet in June. They all talk about what they're doing and how they're fundraising for the year. And Mr. McGill has a chance to tell us what his goals are, and we get everybody on the same page. We don't hear any complaints from parents because we spread everything out. And it works really well, at least in my opinion, so far. So that's kind of, that's in a nutshell my experience with the board. That's what I bring to the board. I've thoroughly enjoyed being on the board. I've enjoyed what I've done with it. I really enjoy the people who are on it. And I appreciate the council appointing me 6 years ago, and I would very much appreciate it if you guys would reappoint me. And I am happy to take any questions you guys have.
Councilmember Vapurzian.
I want to congratulate Mr. McGill and your staff. I'm a firm believer that everything rises and falls on leadership, and the reason you have 900 people that want in is because you were an A and Maumelle High School was a D. That's the facts. Now, we can all have a lot of conjecture as to why that is. My daughter graduated from Academics Plus. Very, very proud of that. What, in your opinion, can be done? Of course, there's always going to be the turnover has been for years higher at Academics Plus, and then the pay scale is not yet where other pay scales are at. What are your thoughts in the future of remedying that?
So the pay scale is something that we have looked at, on a regular basis for the last 6 years. Charter schools don't get as much money as public schools do. And
Explain that if you can, or Mr. McGill, or whoever knows.
I mean, he obviously is going to know a lot more than I do, but
Just give me a number. What does a public school get versus a charter school per student? Is that what we're talking?
Last year, we spent in Academics Plus $7,700 per student. Pulaski County Special spent $12,000.
Okay.
That's just it.
So you have $4,300 per student more.
pay teachers more than Bluffton County.
Okay, okay,
$2,500.
okay,
And that's actually, over the years,
okay.
wholeheartedly agree with you. Like, teachers aren't paid enough for what they do. They
Yes.
teach my kids, God bless
Well, I
them.
mean, that's what we work on here for our uniformed personnel. If we can pay them appropriately, we get to keep them longer.
Well, and that's, and to that point, given that we do get less than some of the public schools, you have to go at that not from a boom, let's give them a whole bunch of money, and then 2 years from now, we can't pay them.
Right.
We've gone at it at a step by step over the years. Can we afford this increase? Can we afford this raise? Yes, we can, because we understand how we're doing, what we're doing, where the money comes from. And so it's been a very careful and deliberative process to do that. To address was it the teacher turnover rate? Is that what you're thinking? The teacher turnover rate, again, I'm going to reach back and talking about the history, which I know some of you may be aware of it. I don't know how many, but looking way back, this school had a very rocky beginning. It just did. Yeah, I figured you guys probably know that. It's a very rocky beginning, and I think it took a while to stabilize. And in fact, I think it was stabilizing when I came on board. Like, I am the beneficiary of what all had been done in the past. And so our kids are the beneficiary of that. The school's the beneficiary of that. So you kind of look at that maybe as a starting line or a starting point. And over the last 6 years, the turnover rate has decreased. And I think, in fact, in the last year, I want to say Academics Plus were around 20%, 21% turnover rate. If you look at statewide, all schools in the state, I think you're looking at about 24% turnover rate. And if you look at Pulaski County, the charter schools that are in Pulaski County, you're looking at a 48% turnover rate. So I wholeheartedly agree. We need to keep good teachers. I'm not sure that's an issue that should be ringing alarm bells, if that makes sense.
Last thing I have for you.
Sure.
Would you address some of what the teachers may be upset with as far as not having a voice to vote that was changed last year? Would you just address that so we're all aware of
Absolutely.
your decision? What
Right. And that's, so I think it was earlier this year, the ability to vote for the elected members for the Board of Trustees. That's what's being discussed. And so until this year, the folks who had the ability to vote for the Board of Trustee members through the school process, and that's going on right now. I think we vote on them in the next couple weeks. So I get to come before you guys. The other two get to go before the rest of the school. The teachers, let's see, how did we voted on this maybe it's been about a couple of months. This was an issue that had been coming up over time, too. So district employees were given the right to vote early on. And I think part of that was because our membership consists of the parents of the students. And so that's the people who vote. For a long time, we didn't have many students. And for a long time, I don't think a whole lot of people voted. And so for a long time, district employees also had that ability. But it's come up that over time, that can also create a conflict of interest situation. And it can create some situations on the board where if your employees rally and they elect a number of favored candidates to the board, you're in a situation where those people are voting on the pay scale for your executive director. They're voting on the direction of the school. They're voting on where the school is going, and they are not necessarily the people who have the most vested interest in the school. What we really want is our parents voting. We really want the parents of our kids because they are absolutely concerned with our students. They're concerned where it's going. And, if you look at it as an analogy, you've got city employees, for example. You've got city employees. Your city employees are paid by the city. They work for the city. But unless they vote, unless they live in the city, they don't get to vote for your city leaders because they don't have that vested interest. And I think it's very similar on a school board. If you don't have a kiddo in the school, is that really something that you need to be voting on if you're only voting on, and I love our teachers. I really do. They are fantastic. Bless them. They do wonderful things with my kids. But I think you also need to have that as part of the reason that you're voting for people.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Councilmember Scott?
Those were two of my questions, so thank you. Took care of that. I understood that it used to be a little bit difficult for parents to register to vote. Has that been corrected?
As
And
far
what
as
is the process?
as far as I'm concerned, it's actually kind of funny. It amuses me that we don't have a better and amuse. I'm going to amuse, but I am surprised we don't have a better turnout because basically you get an email and you click a link and you give your first name, you give your last name, you give your kid's first name, your kid's last name. I think that's about it. And then you submit, and then you're registered to vote.
Okay, and are people aware of how to do, of that process?
They should be. You can always do more. You can always publicize more, short of hauling people up and saying, this is how you vote. I know we send it out twice a week. We have a newsletter that goes out twice a week electronically, and if you enroll, you're going to give your email address. You're going to get this. That goes out twice a week. I know we've got it. I believe we've got it on our webpage as well, advertised. But really, the newsletter is the way that you should be seeing it. And I think right now that's has been top of the newsletter for a couple of weeks now. So unless you just really don't want to see it, it should be there.
It's there.
It's there.
Okay, and how do you propose to maintain, if you feel that it's adequate, or improve board transparency?
So, board transparency, I'm curious as to where your question comes from,
Well,
if I can ask.
I am
Sorry.
amazed at how many people have reached out to me as a council person on this decision. And, they had this list of things, and because I don't have a child in the charter school and know nothing more about it than it's just a wonderful school and it gives really good grades and the kids seem to love it and they've got all these wonderful buildings, and, it's just an awesome, awesome place. These are the things that I was told, and
Understood.
so all I can do is try to paraphrase what they were saying. More than one person who talked to me said that they didn't feel that there was adequate transparency.
Okay.
That not all, if you didn't go to the meeting, there wasn't a good way of finding out everything that went on at the meeting. And it's like reading minutes versus seeing body language and dialogue, and more discussion ensued, that kind of thing. So that may be taken as transparency, but it also may just be taken as what method of communication is used so that people feel as involved with the board as what they want to feel.
Understood. Okay. Then I can address that.
Okay.
Absolutely. Sorry. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's easier to know what the question, it's easier to know how to address it. So for transparency, this is a board. We do operate under, just like you guys operate under the rules that govern a board of an entity. We conduct our official business in a board meeting. Those board meetings are set at the beginning of every school year. There are the second Monday of every month. Occasionally there's an exception here and there, but that's usually posted along with the schedule on our website. So the board meetings are not a secret. They are there. The agenda, it's not a particularly detailed agenda usually. It covers the areas we're going to talk about, generally speaking. It doesn't change, so you kind of know what to expect. These are what's going to be covered. And that also comes out before the meetings. The minutes get approved the month later, and so those also get posted to the website. I think maybe there's a difference between transparency and publicity, because we haven't, from my perspective, we've done what we need to do to be transparent. And if you want to see board body language and you want to see every nuance of the discussion, there's no better way than to be in the chair, and that's an hour to 2 hours of your time once a month. And you don't have to come every month if you're not a board member. Come and show up when you want to. That said, again, I'm going to reach back into the history of the board, and this is, when you sit on a board and you learn its personality and you learn kind of how it works. this is a board that went through really rough times, and there's still some members on there who remember that. And I think Mr. McGill probably remembers that too. And so at one point in time, you know, there's a saying that any publicity is good publicity. This board did not subscribe to that at all. There was a time when if there was somebody there in the meeting, it was because something bad was going down, because it was really rough. The school just about shut down. So I think there's still some of that reluctance, but there's also kind of a debate as to how do you communicate more about the board from a board perspective as opposed to from an individual board member's perspective. So there's a constraint, and I know you guys understand that too. Like, you can't just go out and say, the city council did this and I don't agree with it at all and I think they're all wrong. Maybe you do, I don't know. I don't think so, I've never seen that, but that's not how our board functions. We tend to function, we make our decisions in our meetings, we have our debate, and then we walk away. And everybody, you know, for the most part, we're okay with it. But we don't tend to go out afterwards and talk about what happened at the meeting and how mad we are and how frustrated. So I don't know if this is answering your question or not. All of this to me goes kind of into the board transparency idea that we have our meetings. If you want to know what's going on with the school, come to the meetings. And we welcome that. Like, public comments, that's awesome. That helps us understand what's going on at the school. I have 6th and 7th graders. I can tell you what's going on with the high school. I'm not as well versed as to what's going on at the elementary school. I might need to go ask one of my fellow board members, or I might need to go ask another parent what's going on there. So I've got some responsibility to go find out if there's something I want to know too. And I think that's also part of being a parent at the school. So I hope I addressed you.
Like I said, I have really been surprised at how many people have reached out, and they care about this, and that's a
Yes.
good thing.
Yes.
But we're in that same boat, you know, that we want people to come to the meetings. We want them to hear the discussion and
Right.
and see that we're sincere when we talk and that kind of thing. And
Yes. That this is really, you know, we welcome that input. Like, that's valuable to know. It's valuable to hear. You know, you want to hear what they're thinking. Like, parents, if you've got ideas, bring it to us.
yeah, I think streaming was mentioned. Yeah, we'd like to have the board meeting streamed.
Okay.
Like ours.
I was gonna say, I was thinking that this one is streamed, right?
Well, it's
Or-
it's recorded.
Recorded.
It's
Okay.
recorded and then
Yeah, it's
placed on the
recorded.
website.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't mind taking that back as an option, because if that would help us improve and help folks be more interested, I don't have an issue with that at all. I think that'd be a great idea. So I'll toss that out at our next board meeting. And if you guys have other thoughts, send them our way.
But you really should be proud of the people who care so much.
We have really, we have really good people. We don't always agree, and there are some strong personalities, but there have been some really good things that have been done. Thank you.
Councilmember Mosley?
First of all, I go back, I've been in Maumelle, as of Saturday, I've been in Maumelle 32 years. I moved here 1986, moved in on a cold April day, kind of like it was on Saturday. And,
At least you didn't
but
sweat.
I was very frustrated by the school system out here because I thought my kids would go to Pine Forest, and they told me my kid would go to Harris Elementary School, which is over on the other side of McCain Mall, and had razor wire around it and all that. I told my wife that wasn't going to happen, and we ended up getting our kids through private school. And I'm still working as a result, and I will be for a long time. And but we did go to a very fine private school, Pulaski Academy, and it was a very parent responsive school, extremely. And I used to go to the board meetings occasionally, and I'd be the only parent there. But the parents were very much behind what was going on there, and the school staff was very responsive, and so on and so forth. And so we did all think alike, and we were very pleased with what was going on. But so I kind of compare it to you all. You're almost like a private school to some degree. And you talk about fundraising. Now, what you're saying is you go out and you fundraise, and you combine that with the money you get from the state. You can do that with a charter school. Is that correct?
So the state money that comes in, and as a matter of fact, I'll separate that out. There's a foundation, a 501c3 that's been set up, and that's the foundation, was it Maumelle Foundation for Education? And that is set up, as you guys know, like state funds all come with particular restrictions.
Right.
And so you can't just say, oh, there's $500 that came from the state, I want to go spend it on X, Y, and Z. You have to follow certain rules. The 501c3, the foundation, is set up so that when we do fundraise, and this is the golf tournament primarily is what I'm eyeballing here, which I think we're on, this will be year 4. Those are monies that when we raise that money, it goes into the foundation. So as a 501c3, if something comes up in the middle of the year that perhaps wasn't budgeted for or is outside of what normally state funds would, go to cover, that's what that money would cover. So it's almost a backstop or a, kind of a stopgap if that's needed, or for extras. If you want to make your science lab 20 times better, if we've got, and I think the hope maybe later on, as we get a little bit stronger, if we have some teachers that we really, really want, maybe we look at that as recruitment bonuses.
Signing bonus.
That kind of, so yes, there's kind of 2 parts to what the fundraising is. One is managing the groups that do fundraising, the Music Society, the PTO, the Booster Club, managing that. And then the other side is the active fundraising for the foundation that will pick up other things.
Can you just ask parents for an outright donation? Ask parents, please donate $1,000 a year or something like that.
And kind of like an annual fund.
Yeah.
That's one of the ideas that's been tossed around, and that would be my preference, but I am only one person.
When I was at PA, we got hit up all the time.
That's part of the reason, when I said this was one of those hot button issues. Early on, I think parents got hit up all the time, and donor fatigue was something that was tossed around all the time, and so people had butted heads so much to figure out how to handle it that nobody could handle it, and they just quit even trying.
Anyway, hats off to you for taking on that task, and you have credentials coming up the wazoo here, attorney and everything else. I think it's brilliant people like you that's probably kept this thing going.
Well,
I didn't think it'd make it. I thought it was going down back there in 2006, that sort of thing. I just didn't think it'd ever make it.
Well.
And, I think Rob McGill has a lot to do with it, and so on and so forth.
Jess Swear as well. So there's a lot of people whose shoulders we stand on today.
Yeah, you guys, everybody says good things. There's three people elected a year to the board, 2 by parents, 1 by the city council.
Correct.
Is that correct?
And it rotates we've got 9 people on the board, so it's 3 years revolving.
All right. Some of the questions were covered, like transparency. We've got that thing. That would be something your parents would probably like, because we've got a lot of people that watch those videos, and they can zip through them and pay attention to certain things. I don't know if we can loan them our room here, but fundraising, transparent. I think that's all I've got. But thank you for all your efforts over the years.
It's
and it's very awkward for us to pick one of your board members. I don't like doing this. I told Mr. McGill today when he called, and I said, I don't like doing this. It's just we don't know enough about the school to be
qualified.
Somebody to do this. But we'll do the best we can, and I appreciate it.
I appreciate y'all's time.
Thank you.
Councilmember Holt.
Ms. Conklin, thank you for being here. Yesterday afternoon, I began receiving phone calls and talking about all these issues, and I was embarrassed because they thought that I knew what they were talking about, and I had no idea. I am the one person on the board, on the council, that I was a blank page, absolutely. So they informed me some, and then this morning I got a phone call from Mr. McGill, and we had an awesome conversation. And I told him that I didn't even know, I hadn't even been in the building, much less know anything about appointing any board members. And he said, well, are you available? And he said, well, come on over, we'll go take a ride. So he took me, this afternoon at 1 o'clock, I went to the school, and he took me on a personal crash program of every room in the entire 2 schools. Got on the cart, and he informed me, he educated me on what it is about this school. And when I walked out of there, I was tingling. I was walking on cloud 9. That is the most. I told him I didn't know how to relate to it, because if I tell you about the education that I had in 1955, and what the kids are doing there. And I told them that these two young boys, they were in the 3rd grade, and they're sitting there with headphones on, learning how to do the computer. I have a computer I don't even know how to print on. I can't do anything with it. So at any rate, my point is that he is enthusiastic. I know him that he wants to get everybody involved. I think the growing pains that we've gone through in that school, I thought it was a beautiful building, but I had no idea. And I think sometimes in taking care of the crushing issues, that sometimes you do sort of slip away from the people business. All of my background and career has been in marketing, sales, customer service, and in the people business. So I know that's what that's all about there. And I know it's difficult. As we've said, everybody has their own vantage point of how we should do this and how we should do that. We're all individual. For so long as I told him about the young man in California, where he knew about it, I can't remember his name, that was beat up and everything, and he said, can't we all just get along? And that's sort of the case there. And I told him that the point is that you have the most awesome responsibility, because those young minds that are in there, that you are molding their thoughts and everything, and when we are gone, they will be the leaders of this country. And so their development, the building is beautiful, it's fabulous, that state-of-the-art gymnasium is like, holy cow. So forgive me, but that's the way I feel right now. I'm having a hard time sitting here. I would like to go jog or something. But anyway, I am so proud of that school, and I'm proud of everybody in it. And I understand you have an awesome, awesome challenge before you. And as I think the other aldermen have said, don't forget about the parents and the teachers. Everybody has a part to play. And together, it can all be done. If I get the chance, I'll start coming to the board meetings. I'd just like to be there and be a part of that, because that is something that the city of Maumelle and indeed Arkansas can be very proud of. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for my enthusiasm. Right.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Conklin?
Hey, boy.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You can stay in here, Ms. Conklin. You've already heard the questions. No, you don't need to go. I'm sorry, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Bright, for applying to serve as the city's representative on the Academics Plus Charter School Board. We have an email from you, but if you want to tell the council a little bit in your own words, you can, and then they've got some questions for you. So.
Could we possibly hold true as to what I did and go have my colleague, Ms. Conklin, sitting in the blue room?
We can, yes, sir. Yeah, if that's what you'd prefer. Normally, it's because we don't want you to hear the questions asked in advance, is what it is, but we can have Ms. Conklin go to the blue.
I would prefer Mr. Swear go to the
I can't do that.
Okay. I apologize.
If you would, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Council. It's been a long time since I've stood here, and I truly appreciate what you do, because I sat there a long time. One thing I did learn sitting next to Timmons is to keep it short, and she used to sit and beat on my leg when I needed to shut up. But I'm going to have to talk just a little bit tonight. Back in I believe it was 96, there were 7 of us that got together back in that blue room and said, we need something better. We need educational opportunities for the kids in Maumelle. And my interest back then was that I had just been elected a city director. And frankly, I didn't know anything about anything. And I'd knocked on a lot of your doors, and you realized how quick I didn't know anything, and I had a lot to learn. But I was asked to be on an education committee because that was one of the things that the residents of this community wanted. And frankly, it was one of these things that the residents of this community knew that for us to get where we are now, we had to have educational opportunities. Well, you've seen all the studies that tell you education and opportunities and educational and quality opportunities for kids is one of the reasons that they moved to a community. We didn't have that here in the style that we wanted. My goal was to have kids from Maumelle, taught by teachers from Maumelle. I grew up in Magnolia, which is a small town of about 12,000 people. Actually, we were 7,400 people when I moved here in '94. And so I kept thinking about Magnolia and where we were on Friday night, every Friday night. Whether you had a kid on the football team, whether you were a grandparent, you were at the high school stadium cooking hot dogs with your church or whatever it was. That's what communities are built of, through your religious institutions, through your educational institutions. That's where people meet. That's where people become a community. And I really saw that is what we needed to become the community that we wanted to become. I believe back then it was work, live, and play. Those three rings. And so for us to be able to achieve that, it was going to take living and playing with the school here. And so we started looking at our opportunities, and frankly, they were horrible. Pulaski County School District said no. State legislature said no. Governor said no. So we were just essentially told to sit down. Well, unfortunately, we were stupid or ignorant enough or naive enough not to. We just kept looking and looking and looking, and we had people from UCA that were partnering with us and telling us, we can do this, but you are going to have to be the first. There were no charter schools in this town. There were no charter schools in this state when we started this back in 1996. We were the first ones. We didn't have any idea what we were doing, except a couple of us that were educators in UCA. And the more we taught to the Waltons, the more that we taught to people across the state, the more that we went to conferences across the country at our own dime, we learned a little bit more and more how to get legislation that will allow this. And frankly, we didn't get good legislation until many, many years later. But we finally got some breakthroughs and got some legislation that allowed us to have, I believe it was 75 students, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, I believe it was. And up until last year, I believe the yellow trailer sat out there. And one of the biggest things, you want to talk about multifamily housing, put a trailer in the middle of this community. And it didn't matter if it was for education. Everybody wants it, but not in my backyard. And so again, we had to step out and we had to do some things that we had never done before. We really didn't know what we were going to do. And frankly, they were tough times. We didn't have administrators that were doing things for us. We had administrators that were doing things to us. We didn't have a lot of board members that really knew what they were doing. Thankfully, we had some guidance at the Capitol then. During that time when all this happened, I was fortunate to be elected to the House of Representatives, and we were able to get some more support through cooperation with people, but we had to learn. And if anybody in that room back in 1996 would have envisioned what we have now, I'm telling you folks, you have got the finest charter school in the state, probably in this part of the country. And I cannot tell you how much that people like Jess and Luke and Rob and Miss Paula have worked their tails off to make it what it is today. But the reason I'm here, they say, if it's so good, why are you here? Well, back in 1999, our city was growing it was going out of style. And as you understand, with growth comes growth pains. And our city started growing to a point where we were having some challenges with how people were communicating with the government and how the government was listening. We didn't have the style of government we had now. We have a city manager form of government. And as a mayor, that was frustrating to have somebody else that could override you when it was my tail on the line. But there was a form of government change, and that needed to happen, not because the guys that sat where you are were doing a bad job. They didn't communicate. They didn't listen. They didn't respond to the people that were sitting out there saying, we need it this way. For us to grow, we need this. For us to move forward, we need this. And I'm not saying they did the wrong thing. I'm not saying anything, but changes need to happen to hold accountable. And that's why I'm here today, asking for a different form of communication, asking for a different level of accountability. I promised my kids back in '96 that I would give them a place to be educated, have the finest education when they walk across the stage. And I assure you, when a kid walks across the stage for Academics Plus Charter School, they have gotten the best education, and we have promised them. My 2 older children go to Bryant schools, and I wish that they could experience this. My motivation back in '96 and 2000 and every position of the way that we went through this was not because I had a kid in the process. It was what was best for City of Maumelle, and it was what was best, frankly, for our state. Our state has a better educational system because of what this city did. I honestly believe that, because we challenged status quo. We made them do it better at the Capitol. Now, they may not have liked it, but I guarantee you our educational system is better across the whole state. I apologize. I'm wrapping it up, Timmons. So I made my kids the promise, and they didn't get to. My older kids didn't get to do that, but my 5-year-old started in kindergarten there this year. And man, as a dad, and somebody that started back in '96, I got to see my little girl walk through that door. And 12 years from now, she will walk across that stage, and she will get her diploma from Academics Plus. And she will have the best education. But I wasted opportunities with my other 2 kids. I'm not going to do that now. So I'm here asking for an opportunity to be involved in a process. I think the challenges on the board are this. Communication to the parents. This is where I hear the most frustrations. And fortunately or not, unfortunately, I'm at the school most every day, whether to pick my child up or go to lunch or whatever the need is. I think there needs to be a different type of communication, because just like back in 2000, when we were growing at the seams, there needed to be a different way of doing things. And I think that time has come, not because Jess Swear and Rob, and to a certain extent, Luke Rivich, and most of those people on that board are doing a dang good job, because, as you know, it sucks sometimes. You don't get paid. You get asked to come up late hours. And I've been where you are. I've been where they are now. But the toughest job that you can have is being on a school board. Why? Y'all deal with residents that don't want apartment complexes next to them. Deal with a parent that is ticked about their kid. That's tough. They're passionate about it. That's the way it's supposed to be. But the heart of that school when we started was going to be parents, teachers, and I think that we have come close to staying true to that. The body of the school, the buildings, you can't get any better. They're just the best. But just like in 2000, we weren't communicating, and the heart of Maumelle was saying something different. And I think if you listen to the parents, and I wish that I had brought the parents or brought letters tonight, I was just going to come up here by myself and not turn it into a show. But I think if you listen to the parents, they want to be communicated with differently. They want to be communicated with at a high level. They want to be communicated with honestly. They want to be communicated with. They want to have the availability to challenge what is happening with our money, what is happening with our kids, what is the curriculum. And I don't think that they feel that right now. And my last thing that I have the concern about the board is this board had the opportunity just recently, and we dealt with this when I was a charter member of the board. How do you deal with the teachers and keep them happy, but also not lose their support? You have got to keep those teachers excited about going to school every day. Every day. Because most days it's no fun. But they want to be teachers. We promised them, you're going to come here and you're not going to get paid as much, but we're going to give you the opportunity to teach in an environment that is like no other. They're challenged right now. And that's not Rob's fault. That's not the board's fault. I think teachers will always be a challenge, but I do disagree with the board's recent decision to take away their right or no, it's not a right, it's an opportunity to vote. And we've always dealt with that. As back in the old days, how do you keep the teachers happy without creating an environment of a union type situation and then keep them motivated every day because they're not coming for what they get paid straight down the street. So I felt like they felt they were sucker punched. Take their vote away, but give them something. Talk to them about here's why we're doing this. So I'm going to close. I've said what I want to say. I only ask that you have a consideration for me, that you look back when 2000, everybody was scared of change. But change has been good. None of you would have been sitting here without it. And so I'm going to ask for your vote. I'm going to ask for your consideration. I appreciate all of your time. And now I'll be willing to take any questions.
Councilmember Mosley?
I'd like to start just by thanking you for all your years of involvement and desire to be involved, not only in our city and our state and everything else. It's remarkable. You get burned out on public service after a while. I mean, I've been only doing it for 5 years, and it's not nearly the glory or anything like that you would think. You know, it's a tough thing, and I admire you always wanting to be involved and try to make.
I was told I was going to get rich in politics. Somebody lied.
Maybe even the old days. But anyway, let me ask you this: how many teachers are there at the school? You know?
Oh, no.
Mr. McGill.
We have 78, and that includes the 14 shots.
Okay, 78. How many parents usually vote, or how many you expect to vote in this next election?
But man, this is a challenge. I think the statement that we have 1,100 kids, 1050 here, and the most that's ever been registered for an election are registered right now, and that's 300.
300 parents.
452.
We're scrubbing the list now to make sure they're actually
450.
I apologize. And that's kind of my point. Is we want these parents registered to vote. We want them to be engaged, and for them to get engaged, you got to get them involved, and it's tough. You got to have meetings at a certain time for teachers. You got to have meeting at a certain time for parents. But I think I wish I could be a part of this change is being. I don't want to be looked at as a board member or anything else that I've ever been. I want to be a mouthpiece for this board. Here is what this school is doing good. Rob and Paula should have their name out everywhere because of the great things that they're doing. I don't think that they get talked about enough. the great things that are going on at this school, and you're competing against internet, TV, everything. We've got to do a better job at letting people know when you come to Maumelle Charter School, here's what you're going to get. An education that's second to none, taught by teachers that are passionate, by an administration that wants to listen. And I think that there is a miscommunication there. Some of the teachers are concerned about communication with the administration. And I'd like to be a part of that. Bringing the Israelis and the Palestinians together. May not be that hard or that easy, but it can be done on that organization.
I can understand. I can see both sides on whether teachers should be voting or not. What do you have a view on that? At
Absolutely.
All? Should be voting?
Because there is a good argument on both sides. Again, you want to make sure that you can't pick who you don't want to be able to stack the board, pick who your boss is, and if you don't do this, I'll do this. That's easy to do in a small school. I would have liked to seen them in some situation feel like that they have a voice, and it takes sitting down with them. I don't know if you give them a spot on the board that's non-voting. I don't know if you give them a board position on the board that is nominated by y'all. I don't know. But I think you got to listen to those teachers. You don't understand the amazing teachers you have over there. I mean, there are teachers that are doing so much more than they should be asked. I pull up to the school every morning and I see teachers, or are those program staff out in front? Mostly teachers doing car duty. Now, I took my kid out of a private school to come to Maumelle Charter School. Teachers shouldn't be doing that. I'm sorry. They should be in there saying, "Good morning, children. I love you, and we're going to learn today." I always tell my kid to have a purple day because that means she was above green, which she got on yellow today, which means she gets no privileges for the rest of the week. My child can be a challenge, but every one of those children can be a challenge, but that's what those teachers are there for. We don't need to see... I think it's a challenge when you have teachers doing car duty. How do we address that? And there may be tons of ideas that Rob has and Paula has, but I think the teachers don't feel like that they have the opportunity for that line of communication right now.
Okay. Okay, I think that's about all my questions here. We did ask Ms. Conklin a lot of questions because we just were trying to learn some things too. We just didn't.
Well, I'm sure she's much better educated than I am.
But anyway, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for your time. And like I told her, I said, it's very awkward to me anyway to be picking a school board member for the school that we're not plugged into, and we're just going to do the best we can.
And the reason, I think Jess and I were you here when we started that? I mean, we were trying to keep accountability.
Yeah.
Right back then we didn't know. We didn't even know. We couldn't get people to show up for an election. We were literally on the phone. We had like a 3/4 quorum that had to be there. You're on the phone getting people to come to election. And we'd have to postpone elections. Finally, they got the bylaws changed. But back then we didn't know what we had. We didn't know. So we asked that 3 members be picked by the board. And it was just accountability. Just help us.
Okay.
And it may be time for that rule to change.
I don't know.
I don't either.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Scott?
We did ask a lot of questions of the prior applicant, and I'll just mention what those were because you have touched on virtually all of them. One was the 2017 vote to disallow teachers voting. You spoke about that. You spoke about improved communication, because that was one of the questions we asked. I stated it as a transparency issue, but really in the discussion, it became really more of a communication channel, a back and forth communication channel. I did ask how difficult it was for people to register to vote.
Not at all.
That's what I was
It used to be.
informed of. And
They used to hide ballots. trying to find them was horrible.
So really, you've touched on all
Not-
the
not
questions that we asked before. Have you continued to attend meetings over the last several years?
No, ma'am. And when I made the decision to leave the board, not only this board, to not only the state legislature, but that board, it was time to turn it over to somebody else. At that point, I also knew that my kids were going to another school. And so I moved my focus to there. And as my daughter walked back into this school, my antennas go up, and I start looking to get involved, and not to make people mad, not to take people's jobs, or just to get involved and make it better. And that's the reason I'm here.
Okay. So I think you've covered what we had asked before. I didn't, John left, but I don't think I've missed anything. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Bright? Councilmember Holt?
I'll be brief, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. In having talked with you before and also listening to you at this point, and if the message that I'm getting is that there needs to be some changes in the communication system. So I think my overall question, I've been trying to sort of phrase it so that I would know how to ask it. What would you say is the detriment that, or is there one, what are the negatives under what it is now as to what you want to create going forward for communication and what will improve by doing what you're suggesting?
I think it's an attitude of wanting people to communicate with the board. Say, come see us, come talk to us. Don't feel scared, whether you're a staff member, whether you're a administrator. I don't feel that technology changes. We don't communicate with people the way that we did 20 years ago. And I think the school is doing a good job in using the technology that it has. I don't think it's a issue of technology. I think it's an issue of wanting to. I think it's an issue of not wanting to rubber stamp. I think it's an issue of having an open, or having a feeling for the staff to have an open door policy. Not with just the administration, but the board members coming and sitting down and saying, we want to hear your complaints. And I don't think that that is the feeling right now. And so I not only would work about being out there, challenging people to tell me, if you could do one thing, what would you change? And right now, I don't think people feel that they can ask that question.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Is there any other questions for Mr. Bright? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Bright. And
Come on, you got more than
no.
There was a council member that wasn't in here. Just,
Do you have any questions for Mr. Bright? Councilmember Vapurzian?
thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Do I need to step out?
No, you can stay in. No. We'll have Ms. Conklin come back in, and then we'll hear from Mr. Swear.
Did someone go get her?
Chief Wynn.
I'm next.
Yeah, but hold on until Ms. Conklin gets back in, if you would. Chief Wynn. Chief, there's two chiefs. They're coming. Okay, Mr. Swear, if you would, state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name's Jess Swear, and I live at 76 Zircon Drive here in Maumelle. I've been a resident of Maumelle since 2001, and lived in 3 different places. I'm not sure, 2 or 3 different wards, but been a board member at the Academics Plus Charter School since 2005. As Ms. Conklin referenced, we have 6 elected board members and 3 appointed board members. In 2005, 5 of the elected positions were open, and there were 5 candidates, and somehow I got elected. And so and I've been serving ever since that. So that's about 12 years, and for about the last 10, I've been the chair. And so several of the issues that you all have discussed here with both candidates are things that I was personally involved in, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you have about any of those issues you brought up or any others with the school. But the reason I came to speak to you all tonight, first of all, let me state that it's exciting for us at the school board to have significant competition for our positions. That has not generally been the case in many years. It's great to see Mr. Bright has a child at our school now, having served with him on the board when I first got on back in 2005, when the school was in a really difficult situation. And we were able to, with a lot of work from him, we were able to survive some really tough times. I think that's really all we did was survive. But now we're not just surviving, we're flourishing over there. The school is doing outstanding. I have 3 children that graduated from there, and one that's graduating in a month. So my 4 children will all have graduated from there after next month. And I'm proud of that, and they've all, well, so far, they've all gone to college. We'll see what happens with Bobby, but they're all doing well, so, that speaks well, I think, for the school. I think they've got a different experience than most traditional public school students received, standing on the boulevard with a boot and going to the Capitol and trying to save their school. So it was an interesting time, but really what I wanted to talk about primarily was, and again, I think both of these are outstanding candidates, and it's great to see that they want to be involved in the school. But what I wanted to talk about in particular was the 6 years that Mrs. Conklin has been on the board. She has been a very active, independent, and clear-thinking board member that has brought tremendous work and success in what she's done to the board. And so what I wanted to express to you all was significant appreciation for what she's done. And I'll just give you an example. She talked about the fundraising committee. But just to give a little background on what was going on there, our school has multiple entities involved, not just the school board, that are involved in running different operations in parts of the school. We have a very active, separately incorporated parent-teacher organization. We have a music society. We now have a very active booster club. All of these are independent organizations that represent different constituencies in the school, and they all had different interests. And then we also had the foundation that myself and Dean Elliott and Luke Ribbich created when we first, I don't know if many of you all remember, but the school was a lessee of the Maumelle Public Facilities Board. And I was tasked with signing a new lease or negotiating a new lease with that organization, and was unsuccessful in doing that for a period of years, some of which was rather, it was just ugly. But ultimately, we bought them out by creating a foundation, went out and got our own financing, because it was our view that the Public Facilities Board had an interest in taking the money that they were making from leasing land from that the city owned to the charter school and using it for other purposes other than the education of those students. And that was very personal and particularly offensive to me. And so, not that anybody had a particular individual agenda. I certainly wouldn't say that. It was just there was a difference of opinion about what that money should be used for. And we wanted it all to be directed to the education of those children, because every cent that we had was money from the state or the federal government that was designed to educate these students. So we created a foundation that had 2 focuses. Really, one was to be the landlord for the school, because the school itself, due to the way the law was structured, was not able to do any financing on its own. So we need to have a separate organization to purchase and finance facilities. And also be a fundraising organization for the school, which Ms. Conklin talked about. And so you had at least those 4. You had the Booster Club, the PTO, the Music Society, and the Foundation. All were separate organizations, all with each with their own board, and each with their own mission to support different portions of the school. And there was a lot of friction between those organizations, as you can imagine, because a lot of we had parents, and these organizations were looking to the parents primarily for financial support to do the things that they wanted to do. And so there was, the PTO was having events and fundraisers and car washes. The cheerleaders were out there doing events and car washes. The Music Society was having events and fundraising, and the parents were spinning around in circles. Somebody's asking me for money every day. And we had deep division on the board itself about how to control that, not necessarily control it, but to organize it in a way that was effective, so that our parents didn't feel like they were being spun around in circles, and at the same time, we wanted effective communication with the parents and those organizations about what our plans were and what we're going to do. And so when Ms. Conklin came on the board, that debate had been going on, and we had made several efforts within the board and with different members to try to create a committee to oversee all that. And we had certain people that wanted the foundation to be in charge of everything. The PTO was very resistant to that because and they had all the volunteers, and so Mrs. Conklin was she came on the board, and this issue had been going on, and we hadn't been able to make any progress. And I asked her to oversee and chair the fundraising committee, which when you chair a committee on our board, that basically means you're the chair and it's your committee and you go out and do what you want to do. We have multiple committees. And she took that, and she was able to bring in the PTO, the Music Society, and the foundation members, bring them in together, all of them to agree, work together and meet and not yell at each other and just walk out and huff. She was able to bring them together and ultimately drafted and created a fundraising policy that set out a whole procedure for how all these organizations interact with each other and with the school as a whole. And without her leadership, I don't think that could have happened. And that's just one example of things that she has carried out and done that I wanted to make sure you all were aware of when you're making this decision, because obviously, as you all have mentioned, you're not intimately involved in what goes on over there. And I say last thing I wanted to do was get in here and be partisan and make your choice difficult. But because, like I say, Mr. Bright is an outstanding long-term public servant of the City of Maumelle, and he deserves recognition for that. I just wanted to make sure you all understood what, from our perspective, how important it is, at least for me personally, and I think the board as a whole, that Mrs. Conklin remain a member of that board. Mr. Bright talked about, changes need to come. Ultimately, I think one of those changes needs to be that I'm no longer there. And that, and I think that Mr. Bright, and you look at the election of board members, we have two positions that are up for re-election. Both of those candidates have applied to be re-elected, and we have multiple other candidates that are also involved. So all of a sudden, it's become real popular to want to be on the board. I come up for re-election next year, so it may not be my choice to be, to be elected or not. So far, I've been elected several times. I don't know how, but that's really what I wanted to express to you all. Is at least from me personally, as a long-term board member, my support for Mrs. Conklin as a board member. Absolutely nothing against Stephen Bright. When he and I served on the board together, he's very passionate and a great servant and would be a great member. I have no doubt about that, and would love for him to be on the board. But it would be very difficult for me, I think, and the long-term success of our board if we lost a member as valuable as I think Ms. Conklin is. So I'll stop there and answer any questions that you all have.
Any questions for Mr. Swear? Thank you very much. All right, at this time, you have a difficult decision. You've got a a ballot before you. You need to check the box for the candidate that you wish to serve, and then you need to sign your name at the bottom. There's not a signature page or signature line, but you need to sign it, and please do it as legibly as possible. And then pass them down. Okay. All right, the vote is actually 4-2, and it takes 5 votes because it's a majority. And so the vote falls to the mayor when there's a vote needed to make a majority. So I will vote with the 4 that voted for Ms. Conklin, so that would give her 5 votes. So Ms. Conklin is the will be reappointed as the city's representative of Academics Plus Charter School. Thank you, Mr. Bright, and thank you, Ms. Conklin, again, for both y'all's willingness to serve on these boards, and we appreciate y'all.
Can I give y'all a point of information, just 2 seconds?
Yes, sir.
Academics Plus is the only charter school in the state that does any type of election for anything, or appointees. All the other boards in the state of charter schools are all self-appointing boards. So that's something to get more people involved. So I just want to let y'all know that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGill.
Thank you.
The next item is the Civil Service Commission appointment, and we also have 2 applicants for that. We have the existing, one of our existing commissioners, Mr. Harvey Durham, and then we have also Miss Joanna McFadden has applied to serve on that board. So at this time, I would ask Miss McFadden if she would go with Captain Pickard, and he'll show you where the blue room is, and then we'll come get you as soon as we're through with Mr. Durham. All right. Mr. Durham, if you'd come on up, and I know your resume's in the packet, but if you want to, in your own words, just tell the council a little bit about yourself.
I've lived in Maumelle since 2009 at 2 DeGraco. Retired from Energy in 2011, and then consulted back. Became a consultant back to them, and done that quite a few years. And then I had an opening on the Civil Service Commission and applied for that. I've been the secretary since 2016. I was before I moved to Maumelle, I lived off of Arch Street and was with the volunteer fire department there. Held almost every position there, from firefighter to chief. We were able to reduce their ISO from a 7 to a 5, and now it's a 4. We're doing good. Last year, about February, they asked me to come back as a kind of an interim chief for a while. They had some issues, personnel, and so I've gone back there for a while and work about 30 hours a week. I've enjoyed being on the Civil Service Commission. And questions?
Councilmember Scott?
What sorts of things did you do, Mr. Durham, that helped to improve the ISO rating on that that fire department?
We replaced a lot of antique equipment, trucks. We've improved the training, improved equipment overall, the hose, antique air packs that we had, and so a lot of that was just upgrading that. And also improving the roster. At one time, we had a roster of about 28 people.
And so you reduced the roster to more qualified people, or
Well, as the volunteers, we had about 28 volunteers on the roster. Now it's like all volunteer fire departments, they're hurting. We have a roster of about 11. But we were able to reduce the ISO and
part of that was the training improvement?
training improvements, yes. Structured training.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all, Councilmember Scott?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Councilmember Mosley?
I may have missed it in your opening remarks. How long have you been on the Civil Service Commission?
5 years.
5 years.
Was it
So
12?
you've served one term, is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay. What do you have any particular experiences you'd want to share on that, or is it?
I think the testing, promotion testing. A lot of our meetings are quick and fast, but the promotion testing, get to see the candidates and the quality of people that you've hired for your police and fire department.
Okay.
And I'm impressed with that. And I'm impressed that you've kept the salaries up so that you don't lose them to Little Rock, North Little Rock, and Conway. You've got some quality people. Wish we could promote them all, but.
All right. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Saunders?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Durham, this is a little bit difficult. I want to ask a couple of questions of the other person, but I always make it a rule. If I ask one, I ask all. So my questions to you are going to seem kind of silly, but I've got to say them. How many times in the last 5 years have you attended Civil Service Commission meetings?
I think I've only missed 2. One was on vacation.
Good answer. I wish I could have asked it that way, but I can't ask it that way of
Yeah.
the other person. Okay, and the second thing is, can you paraphrase to me what the purpose and duties of the Civil Service Commission are? Just in general.
I think the biggest thing is if there's any concerns that between the firefighters or police officers, that they're treated fairly. You listen to the information that's given to you with an open mind. And then the biggest thing is go by the rule book we have.
Okay. All right. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. The other questions for Mr. Durham? All right, thank you very much. And if Ms. McFadden doesn't object, you can stay in the room, so, yeah.
That was a new one. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
How long does it take to get a pizza here? You ever tried that?
No.
Not during a council meeting.
Oh. Oh, Good evening, Ms. McFadden. We've got your resume that was included in the packet, but if you want to just tell the council a little bit in your own words, a little bit about yourself, and then they've got some questions that they prepared.
Okay. Well, good evening. My name is Joanna McFadden, and my family and I reside at 176 DeVille Drive. Just to give you a little bit of information about me, currently I work for the Arkansas Department of Transportation, and I serve as the Equal Employment Opportunity Section Head. And in that position, I'm charged with the responsibility of ensuring equal and fair access to our employees as well as contractors. Prior to that, I was the Human Resources Director for Pathfinder in Jacksonville, and in that role, I did all aspects of human resources. And then before that, I worked for Baptist Health. At the time that I was employed, they had about 8,000 employees, and I was the only full-time employee relations specialist. So I handled the majority of any complaints, any gripes, and anytime people came to see me, they were never happy. But I did everything that I could to at least get them to come to common ground so that we could work through our differences. I possess a MBA from UALR, a Bachelor's of Business Administration from UALR as well, with an emphasis in human resources. And I also have 2 HR certifications, one which comes from the Human Resources Certification Institute, and the other from the Society of Human Resources Management. I would really like to be a commissioner because I am passionate about human resources. I am passionate about people having opportunities to excel in their careers because, as all of you know, we spend more time at work than we do with our families. So if we're going to be here, we might as well be able to make the best of our time. Just in closing, I would just like to say I would consider it to be an honor to serve the mayor, the council, the commission, and the citizens of Maumelle. And I'm open for questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Ms. McFadden? Councilmember Holt.
Good evening, Ms. McFadden. I like your resume. I like your attitude. It sounds like that you are, although you have to abide by a certain group to find quality people, that you are a people person. You enjoy being with and talking to people, right, and bringing out the good stuff in them, or?
Yes, sir, I do. One of the things, just to go back a little bit, when I first came to college, I wanted to be a pediatrician. And so as you can see, I'm not a pediatrician. I got into biology, and we went to this zoology class, and I had to look at these little things swimming around under a microscope. Right. And I said, well, I'm going to have to do this. I don't want to do this. I want to go straight to being a pediatrician, which wasn't possible. So my father and I sat down, and we said, well, what are some of the things that you're good at? My mouth. I love to talk. I love to meet people. And so that's how I ended up in the field of human resources.
Right. Good choice. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councilmember Saunders.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. McFadden, you have good credentials. You're well educated, and I respect that. I'm going to ask you 2 questions. First, how many Civil Service Commission meetings have you attended here in Maumelle in the last, say, 5 years?
I have not attended any, but I have gone back and watched the videos from the past of the meetings.
Okay. Can you summarize for me what you feel like the duties and responsibilities are of a Civil Service Commissioner and the Commission?
Okay. Yes, I'd be happy to. I feel that the role of the Civil Service Commissioner would be to work very closely to ensure that our uniformed officers, both in the police department and the fire department, that they are treated equally while they're on the job, and that's as it relates to promotions, firings, any disciplinary action. And also, one of the things that I'm really passionate about is making sure that they are able to get any training that they need, because I feel that if the employees are treated very well, they're going to be our best resource to recruit great candidates. So.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Ms. McFadden?
I feel like I want to ask you something, but I just don't really know what to ask you. But you're very, very impressive, and I guess I was just going to say thank you for applying. And, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else have any questions? If not, thank you very much, Ms. McFadden, for applying. And at this time, the council members have a ballot in front of them. If you would please check the box of the candidate that you wish to serve as your appointment to the Civil Service Commission, and then sign it at the bottom, please. Okay, y'all are killing me tonight. We also have another 4-2 vote, and Mr. Durham has 4 votes to be reappointed to the Civil Service Commission, so I'll cast the 5th vote for Mr. Durham so that he can be appointed to the Civil Service Commission. And Ms. McFadden, don't give up, because we have a lot of other opportunities to serve in Maumelle, and I think with your credentials and your passion, you would do a great service to our city, so thank you. And Mr. Durham, thank you for your willingness to continue to serve on the commission. So.
All this time.
All right, moving on to the next item, we have the resolution 2018-11, amending a street name. When you get all the ballots taken care of. City Clerk Timmons, if you'd read resolution 2018-11, please.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, a resolution to be entitled Resolution Number 2018-11, a resolution amending the name of certain portions of Count Massey Road to White Oak Crossing and for other purposes.
Okay, this was brought forward by some property owners. I don't see anybody here in the audience that are those property owners, but it was brought forth that they felt like that the name of Counts Massey needed to be changed because there's some just impressions that Counts Massey is all within the city limits of North Little Rock. And so they asked that that portion of Counts Massey that runs east and west from the 90-degree turn that starts there and goes to the interstate be renamed White Oak Crossing to reflect a different name for that area. And since part of that street is in North Little Rock, it also had this name change has to be voted on by the city of North Little Rock at their meeting next week. And so it would take the positive vote of both councils in order to make the name change official. There's about a half-mile section that's in North Little Rock. Half of the south half is in North Little Rock for a quarter mile, and then both sections of the roadway for another quarter mile are within North Little Rock. The remainder of this area, well, no, that's not true, because we didn't work on part of it. So there's about a half mile that's split between north and south, and then there's a quarter mile that's fully within North Little Rock. And the property owners in this area were notified by letter, and you have copies of the letter. That's everybody that fronted on the roadway that could have a possible address on that roadway. And we only notified the people in Maumelle. It's North Little Rock's responsibility to notify the ones in North Little Rock. Councilmember Scott?
Have we gotten any feedback one way or the other?
I have not received any feedback.
I have not received it. The letter that was sent out told them that they could either appear here today, or if they didn't want to appear, if they got something in writing to the city clerk by, I believe it was last Wednesday, that would be included in the packet.
I personally like the idea of having it be a Maumelle road rather than what is perceived as a North Little Rock road. There's already enough confusion about our city boundary, so I'm in favor of this.
Okay. Councilmember Mosley?
What resident, can you say what residents wanted this change, or?
Now, this is third-hand information. They went through the city attorney on this, but Connie Rayleigh at the MGC and MGC, is that right? MGC Kids, is that what it is? Maumelle Gymnastics and Cheer. She's actually in North Little Rock, but she was one of the ones that expressed it according to what I was told. Now this, I was told this. I didn't talk to Ms. Rayleigh herself. And then I believe Dr. Haas also was in favor of this change.
Okay. What are your thoughts? I mean, is this something you want, or?
Well, it's not something that I asked for. It wasn't my idea. I mean, I'm going to tell you that. They came to me originally with a whole nother name of a street, and I did not like that name at all. I felt like it was going to be confusing, and I just didn't like the name they proposed. And when they came back with White Oak Crossing, I didn't have a problem with that. I will tell you something totally different. When we were working on the strategic plan, I said we need to name areas of Maumelle similar to like the Heights and all that. It's kind of what I talked about a little bit last month when we talked about Morgan. Well, I think we need names for our entryways and things like that. So I always said that ought to be White Oak Station or White Oak Crossing or something out there, because the minute you enter Maumelle coming from the interstate, you're going to cross White Oak Bayou. So that area needed to be named something. I didn't have White Oak Crossing, but I had something to that, using the adjective of White Oak there. I wanted to name Morgan area Morgan Station, because I always thought there was a railroad station there. Found out there wasn't. But that was the other idea, and I forget the name I had for the south end of town, but like Riverland Station or whatever. So, and I don't remember the exact one, but you could do another one down on Crystal Hill also. So we actually talked about doing a roundabout down there at Crystal Hill and Counts Massey at that area, and then name that area, River Crossing or River, now I'm using crossing, but River, something. I can't remember. I had a bunch of cool names 4 years ago. I don't have them now, but that's that. So that I'm not saying this was my idea to name it that, but I actually wanted to name and they call them gateways. It's what they call them. I was trying to think of the name, but you have a gateway into your city, and so that would be the White Oak Gateway. And so with using this name, it'd be the White Oak Crossing Gateway.
Okay. The only I'm kind of neutral on this. I don't care that much one way or the other. It's just that everybody has known that as being the Counts Massey extension, and everybody's been hoping for that to be completed. And maybe a year from now or something like that would be more appropriate to do that. But just to say we finished Counts Massey extension, but we're changing the name already. I don't know. It's just that's the only thing.
Well, the road didn't exist a year ago.
Right.
A mile of it, over a mile of it.
But everybody knows that is Counts Massey extension.
I would almost beg to differ, because I was told the other day we need to put a road out to the interstate. So I'm like, it's done.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I'm still educating folks,
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Vapurzian?
I think it's a brilliant idea. I think our White Oak Bayou is very underutilized, and it is one thing that makes Maumelle a destination. The bayou and White Oak Crossing screams Maumelle, and I can see, I'm looking ahead at some community development on the other side there, some big box stores coming in there, and the thing being called White Oak Crossing. It sounds like something commercial. That's what it Counts Massey's. I don't know what that is, but it's not us. It's not Maumelle.
And I did ask that question. I think Counts Massey is two people's last name, is what I've been told. I always wondered about that, because, the Polish community was out here, and I know Count Pulaski is an actual count that came from Poland or whatever for the name for Pulaski, but that's not, because it's Counts with an S on it. But that's my understanding. It's two people's last names, but I couldn't swear to that if you made me. That's what I've been told.
All righty.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. I got a council member missing. So I want to wait.
Well, while we're waiting, there were quite a few names floated for that road, and one we spent a lot of time researching, and the lady's name was Arkansas Mason. She was one of the first. Her family was one of the first settlers in the area, and we kind of wanted to call that Arkansas Mason, but it was confusing because Arkansas is the state, and Mason sounds like, the organization. So we weren't able to follow that historical thread, and it's kind of a shame that the name was not a little more unique, because that would have given us a lot of information about Arkansas history for anyone who was interested in researching that. Of course, over time, when you name a road, the meaning of the name sometimes goes away, like Counts Massey. What is that? What does that mean? But there were quite a few names floated out to a variety of people, and this one ended up being the winner.
It's a great name. I hope we just get to use it sometime.
And I'm like Alderman or Councilmember Vapursan, I can just see the crossing at White Oak, this wonderful retail development.
But I think it's going to bring people further into Maumelle because White Oak Crossing, what's a crossing? It's crossing the bayou. Well, what's that? Well, it's a wildlife preserve wetland, so to speak. And, we've got boardwalk out there. We've got, trails and
Viewing
people are going to come and
stations.
spend the day in Maumelle.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, Councilmember Mosley.
I'm a no vote tonight. I mean, if it, by any chance it gets voted down, I'll vote for it in about a year from now. I just didn't want to change it until we get this all finished. Thank you.
Okay.
You ready to make the decision?
Well, I'm waiting on our sixth council members, so there's at least our people to vote. I don't know. Do I have to oh, yes, sir.
So a little bit of background on this. I think one of the, interestingly, Councilmember Mosley, one of the reasons I think this came up is that there was so much confusion that became very apparent during the special elections that people thought that area was actually in North Little Rock. And so I think that was one of the things was designed to sort of separate the that portion of the road away from what people think of on Counts Massey, which most folks who see Counts Massey see it because they're driving down the boulevard. You see the McDonald's on the corner. It's kind of industrial in nature. It's very North Little Rock-esque and not very Maumelle-esque at all. And then to complicate things, the road takes a sharp 90-degree turn. And almost in that area, the character of the road is a very different sort of road. But I think I've sufficiently stalled long enough. So.
And the other thing I want to mention is we do have on our master plan a roundabout to go at the location where the name change will take place. And so as you would enter that roundabout, you would actually leave Counts Massey and then enter into White Oak Crossing roadway. So the location of the change makes a lot of sense. Whether you agree with the name change or not, the location where it changes names does. So, all right. So we have a motion on the floor to approve resolution number 2018-11. All those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no.
No.
I have 5-1 is what I.
No.
Oh, you're a no? Okay, so we have 4-2.
Wait.
4-2 with 2 absences.
If it takes my vote to pass the resolution, I will vote yes.
3 times in one night.
Yeah. I think I hadn't voted that much time the 11 years I've been here, so. All right, moving on. Mayor's comments. Put a note on here, and that's why it's written the way it is, but there's a ribbon cutting on May the 4th on the Counts Massey / White Oak Crossing. It should have said Counts Massey Extension, White Oak Crossing. I don't know the exact time on that yet. That's a Friday, probably morning time, but I'll get a time and I'll send an email out to you. When they gave me the date, they didn't give me a time. I've got it 10 o'clock on my schedule tentatively, but I may have to tell you it's different than that. It will take place on the bridge. It's where the ribbon cutting will take place at. Because we can actually get on the bike lane right there and not have to close the roadway down. So, in order to do a ribbon cutting, so we will send out an email in plenty of time so that everybody knows where it is. So, just want to make y'all aware of that. And then just a heads up, not anything we're voting on, but we got a notification from our health insurance, which is a self-funded pool through the municipal league, that we're going to have a mid-year increase in health insurance on July the 1st because we had a huge claim that was filed between October 1st and March 31st of October 1st of 17 through March March 31st of 17. And so I'm still talking to them. Do what? Did I mess that up?
March of 18.
March of 18, I'm sorry, yes, March of 18. So, but it will probably have to come to a budget resolution to the council with that. They do it in 6-month increments. We've never had an increase since we've enrolled in the program since 2013, but we've been hit with an increase. And so I want to give y'all heads up because we give you time to hear about the budget resolutions. The interesting thing about the budget resolution, because of the language that was put in this budget, we're going to have to add it to every single department's budget. So it will have to be a budget resolution that affects every department in the city of Maumelle. So we'll have to have the numbers for each department that they will increase. And Planning Commission report, that will be done at the next meeting because they meet later this month. Council members' comments? Councilmember Saunders?
Thank you, Mayor. Can you give us a quick update on the roundabout at Club Manor and Odom South?
We sent out an ad, put an ad in the paper for RFQs to come in. They're coming in 16th of May, is that right, or it's a Wednesday?
The day, I believe it is.
It's first or second week of May. The RFQs will come back for the engineering firms, and then we will make a selection of the firm, and then when they give us the price, we will bring that back to the council for a budget resolution also, as we discussed when we went out for it, when Councilmember Vaperzan mentioned that, we're going to go out for RFQs, and then we'll bring it back before the council to fund it if you want to do it this year. So, and I'm talking about only the engineering fees, not the construction fees.
Okay. And how do we stand on the adaptive control system?
The adaptive control system, the product is in. We've got the equipment, but the engineers that are working through MetroPlan keep tweaking the plans. And so I'm supposed to have the plans this week. They did the inventory in 14. There's been some changes, so they had to do some cabinet reconfiguration and some things like that. But we got the highway department's comments about 2 weeks ago, and they're making changes to those plans. And then they're addressing some concerns that the equipment provider had also. So the equipment came in, and we're still tweaking the plans on how the actual controllers have to be configured and everything. So, but the plan is to put it in place this summer. Now, in the discussion we had last week on it, the equipment provider said that's all and good. We can install it during the summer, but because y'all's impact is created by school traffic to a certain degree, we might have to let it run, and then we may have to then let it analyze school traffic and then make some additional adjustments to get it working correctly. So they were just warning that if you install it in the summer, that's not your peak traffic time. So, we might have to stay there a little longer to do fine tuning of it.
Okay.
So,
thank you, Mayor.
All right. Councilmember Scott?
Anything new on Crystal Hill?
No, ma'am. We're working, well, I hadn't started on it. I've worked on 2 RFQs. We've also got an RFQ for this building remodel also. And so I've been working on that, and I've got to get back on trying to get some right-of-ways, but we're also trying to do the final closeout on the utility job out at Counts Massey right now. So I've spent a lot of time out there trying to be kind of a mediator between the property owners in the natural trail area and the contractor that they didn't feel like had addressed their concerns wholly in the cleanup process. So as soon as I can free up a little bit of time, I'm going to start working on some right-of-way acquisitions.
Because right now you're at a stalemate on that deal, right? I mean, with right away, McGeorge and company.
Well, we were at a stalemate. They wouldn't sign the documents, but it was more than McGeorge. It's a lot of the landowners in that area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any thought to abandoning that project?
No, sir. Not in my mind.
Okay.
Well, we can. You could abandon the project. The money would just go to repay the bonds. But why abandon the project? How are we going to deal with the road situation down there? You got to rebuild the road. But we can't rebuild. We can't just overlay the road with that funds because it doesn't allow for it in the language that's in the ballot. So we can let that road just continue to deteriorate the way it is, or we can rebuild the roadway with the bond funds that we have.
I mean, that does come under just regular maintenance, I assume, just repairing potholes and that sort of thing.
It needs more than pothole repair.
Yeah.
It needs a whole new base put under it, and that's not just an overlay. That's a lot more than putting 2-inch asphalt on that entire length. We could put the 2 inches asphalt and it wouldn't last a year probably. Because we're doing that now. We're overlaying sections and it's just falling right back through.
Now, if we were to turn that money back and pay off the bonds, when those areas develop along there, the developers would have to go ahead and add for widening. We would,
In a piecemeal fashion, yes.
yeah, in a piecemeal
Yes.
fashion. I mean, we've got kind of piecemeal going now. There in front of the North Little Rock section, I guess. The housing is in North Little Rock, correct? Those,
The condominiums, yes, and the fenced area is in North Little Rock, yes.
Okay. So they've put that in, but that's not in Maumelle, is that correct?
The north side of the road is not in Maumelle, the south side is.
South side is.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's all I've got right
Okay. Councilmember Vapurzian?
I just want to say you have my full support for Attorney Norris to go after eminent domain when that time comes, because that time probably will come.
It very well could on some.
Yeah, but this project needs to be done sooner than later, so, and I know you agree.
I agree.
A lot going on, so
Yep.
just wanted to voice that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Go get them.
All right, any other council members' comments? Mr. City Attorney?
Couple things. Save the date. Everyone pull out your calendars. Mark down May 12th, Lions Club Fish Fry on Saturday. All y'all are invited. I'll be bugging you about it later. Another thing is next Monday, we'll be holding amnesty court again. Let all your friends, neighbors, colleagues, and constituents who have outstanding warrants for failure to pay fines, contempt of court, and the like, and failures to appear, know that they can come in on next Monday at 1:30 into court, and we'll wipe that all away, but they'll have to get back on track for those things. Finally, the third thing I wanted to say is I think I saw Mr. Peterson out there earlier, and if that's the case, then we had the entire Civil Service Commission within the City Council tonight. So just a fun fact. That is all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No, they weren't within the council chambers, though. They're in City Hall.
Correct. They were all in City Hall.
Yes, yes, yes.
Lawyers.
Yeah, lawyers.
What is?
Madam City Clerk, do you have any comments?
No, sir.
I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Offered.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no.
It's 4-2, somebody has to.
4-2. I'm not breaking that tie.